When the WHO declared the coronavirus outbreak a public health emergency of international concern, our entire world changed overnight. This pandemic changed every nation, every city, every family, and every single individual. In a flash, everything that once felt secure was suddenly at risk. Words like social distancing, quarantine, flattening of the curve suddenly became part of our day to day vocab. Halfway into the pandemic, and the International Monetary Fund had already termed the inevitable economic fallout to be the worst recession since the Great Depression of the 1930s. Like any other recession in history, we are now seeing widespread pay cuts, double figure unemployment rates, struggling businesses, and blanket freeze of new hiring activity. Very few, if any of us, saw this coming. And honestly, how could anyone have predicted the situation we now find ourselves in? This crisis shut down the world economy on a scale never seen before. With such a gloomy state of affairs, this pandemic was a wake-up call in several ways. From the personal finance perspective, it reminded us of many things that we were all aware of but hardly cared about. For example, the importance of having insurance or living on a budget. As things seem to be slowly inching towards normalcy, in this webinar, we are going to talk about the biggest financial lessons to learn from the current crisis to weather this storm and the next one too. I would now like to request Chinmay to introduce our panelists for the day.
Good morning, everyone. I hope I am audible.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the today's online panel discussion on personal finance lessons from the pandemic. I would like to introduce to our eminent panelists for the occasion. Our first panelist has been helping professionals and families with their personal financial planning needs. Ms. Ranjini Prabhu Tendolkar is management graduate in financial services with over 23 years of experience. She now serves as the vice president and financial coach at Happiness Factory and has been truly adding happiness in their clients' lives. I would like to welcome Ranjini ma'am to the platform.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our second panelist for the day, Mr. Abhay Daudkhane, is a deputy vice president at Kotak Life Insurance and heads the protection business project along with strategic initiative vertical. Mr. Daudkhane has 14 years of rich experience in the life insurance industry and has been part of the corporate world for over 20 years now. Apart from being a LIMRA certified trainer, he also holds a master's in marketing and is a mathematics graduate. I would also like to welcome Mr. Abhay Daudkhane.
Thank you. Thank you very much and good morning, everyone.
Our final panelist for the day, Mr. Pankaj Purohit, is a chartered accountant and company secretary by profession. While he serves as an associate director at KPMG India, he has his expertise in accounting, taxation, and internal audit. He has been part of the financial services industry for over 14 years now. I would like to welcome all the eminent speakers for the day on behalf of PTVI IM Alumni Association.
Thank you
so much. Thanks.
Also, before we begin, a small disclaimer: the views here expressed by the panelists are their personal views and does not reflect those of their organization. Shraddha?
Yeah. So let's begin our panel discussion, shall we?
Yes.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So recessions and depressions hurt the active and speculative investors the most. When the markets undergo volatile swings, most portfolios shrink by almost 25 to 30% in matter of months, if not weeks. So my first question to you, Ranjini, is that how do you manage to keep your clients away from all the noise?
Before I start, thank you so much for allowing me to participate in this particular discussion. Thanks, Shraddha, and thanks everybody else. Yeah, I think it's a very important question that Shraddha has just posed to me. What we have seen typically today is, the problem with investors is they take the investment decisions typically driven by the flavor of the day. So be it, it could be based on news that they read or, the finance channels that they, watch every day or some sort of advice that they typically get, right? Now, the point is that all financial investments or instruments that we're talking about definitely have their own levels of risk and reward, right? So it's about trying to understand the relevance of these, financial instruments that we're talking about in our scheme of things. So normally it's been a very product driven, decision making that we have seen with people when it comes to talking about trying to either put it into a stock or put it into, property or, gold, whatever it might be. The whole objective has always been products. While that product could be, a great one to have, but it's purely in terms of how relevant is that in your scheme of things that really decides whether that instrument makes any sense in your scheme of things. So today what I have seen is, when the product is thought about, it's purely restricting your decision making from a perspective of kitna deti hai. That's the normal, thought process that one goes through, right? And it's very important to understand why are you investing your money, which will clearly set the stage in terms of, what should be the pace of growth, what's the level of risk that your investment needs to go through, what is the time horizon you have, how much is it that you need to basically clearly understand as to what should be the right asset allocation that you should have to take care of a scenario like this, right? And these are all, I mean, real life situations from a perspective of recessions. I mean, you could call it depression. All of this is predominantly things. It's not like the first time that it has happened, right? Things do happen. These events definitely come up in life. So it's just a question, when you're very clear about what's the objective that you want to take care of, the noise that is there around you in terms of, picking up the flavor of the day kind of slowly, fades off, because of the fact that you're very clearly focused, saying that, okay, I have this level of risk taking capacity. I know that this money is not required at this point in time, and I know that this is what I am set to address in my life. If these things are clear, the noise around you slowly fades off on its own, and you kind of, are invested in the appropriate assets.
Thank you, Ranjini. Thank you for addressing the questions so beautifully. Chinmay?
Sure. In the current situation, work from home has become the new normal across countries, and it is expected to continue in the post-pandemic world. Even though it's beneficial to the employers in terms of increased productivity and reduced expenses, salaried individuals like us are expected to see an increased tax outflow. So my question to you, Mr. Pankaj, is that how should one tackle this, and what can be done to reduce one's tax liability?
Yes, yes. Hi, Chintan. Hello. Good morning, everyone. So this is a very important question, and I have been asked across the years that how to reduce a tax liability. And as we know that due to the current pandemic situation, the work from home has become a new normal. And looking at the current situation, it looks like that it would continue for at least 6 to 8 months, if not more, before we get a vaccine and everyone is cured out of it. So till that time, we have to get accustomed and used to it. And so what has happened is that the salary inflow in terms of the employee is getting has increased for the month of April to June, wherein the contribution to the provident fund has been reduced to that effect. But from a tax saving perspective, now I think everyone has realized the importance of savings as such. And if you look at the deduction that the income tax offers, is primarily and largely focuses and encourages an individual to have a savings kind of a mindset, so that his personal and professional life both are being taken care of. So if you look at certain deduction that is being offered under the Income Tax Act, is like contribution to the LIC, contribution to the pension fund, and from a well-being perspective as well, in terms of taking health and medical insurance, which now everyone has started to realize that it plays a very, very important role considering the pandemic that everyone is going through. And additionally, also the income tax, which offers different deductions under 80G as well, which is with respect to the donation, that if anyone has done a certain donation to different trust or any other institution, or even the PM Care Fund as well, if anyone has contributed to that extent as well. And now what most of the people are So now one more initiative which government has also taken, wherein they have given relief to the people who have taken the loans, wherein they have extended the moratorium facility, wherein you have been given a facility to not to pay EMI for a period of 6 months. Obviously, your liability will not get diminished; it will be extended by that period of time. So now a lot of people to have a balance in the portfolio in terms of having the excess liquidity or the adequate liquidity in hand. Most of the people have taken out of maybe a conservative approach, and certain people have also taken that approach to uh, to tie down the situation as well, because there is a lot of job loss and there are a lot of reduced income scenarios as well. So considering all that fact, we need to be very cognizant, and I would maybe give a suggestion to everyone that moratorium, if required, should only be taken. It can backfire as well, because if you take moratorium, it has a larger financial implications as well. At the same time, it's a very excellent and a very good tool which is implemented, but at the same time it should be used in a very matured way as well to manage your finances. Otherwise it has a larger financial implications as well. So coming back to the question on the deductions part, so now considering the situation, everyone has now realized the importance of different deductions under the income tax, like LIC, medical insurance premium, and on the home loan side as well. So I was mentioning on the moratorium part. So if someone has taken a, let's say, home loan, and if he's not paying that EMI as well, so he'll not be eligible for that deduction as well. So one should be very cognizant and have to be very sound in terms of the financial planning aspects as well.
So,
Thank you, Pankaj sir, for your views on the current situation. Shraddha, could you please continue?
yes. So as we all know, today India is ranked second in terms of countries worst hit by the coronavirus pandemic. This has driven a sudden realization around significance of protective investments, especially when it comes to the aspect of health and life security. Buying insurance has become the topmost priority for people who used to look at insurance as an expense. So my question to you, Mr. Abhay, is when can one say that a person is properly insured? According to you, how much insurance is enough?
Great. Thank you, Shraddha, for your question. Good morning to everyone. First of all, I appreciate PTV Institute for taking this wonderful initiative to assemble all the alumni under one roof with experts like Pankaj ji and Ranjani ji. Nice job, Chinmay and Shraddha, you are doing.
Thank you.
The kind of questions you are throwing to us is really thought-provoking, right? So let me give you a very, very fundamental principle of financial planning, right? And if our participants has pen and paper, because last is the latest, so whatever is been told earlier, you will forget by the end of this webinar. So all the experts are putting their views and thoughts, so it's better to make some good notes, right? So fundamentals of financial planning says there are 4 C's and 3 D's in life. So I will elaborate how these 4 C's work. The first C is called creation of income. So let's say when you go out for a job or for a business, you make some money, you make some income, right? That is called creation of income. So let's say I go out, I work, and I earn 100 rupees of money. Then the second C comes into the picture depending on the first C. That second C is called consumption of income. So once I earn 100 rupees, I will put 80 rupees as an expense. Numbers are just example, right? So from where this 80 rupees coming? It is coming from that 100 rupees. Now, after spending money, I park some money for future financial goals and planning. That is my dreams, my requirements. So 20 rupees I'm parking somewhere, right? Different asset class there, bank, FDs, mutual fund market. These all are there. So I'm bringing third C into the picture, that is called creation of wealth. So I'm repeating: creation of income, consumption of income, creation of wealth. Now life has a risk, the way you shared that corona pandemic, right? In India, the number is touching around 1 lakh per day now, right? And the fatality rate is around 1.7%. So though the percentage has gone down, but the number has come up Why? Because at a larger base, if you take a smaller percentage, even the number will be bigger. So it's all how we manage our data. Now 3D may come into the picture. Now what is 3D? Disease, disability, and last but not the least, death. Now any one of 3D comes into the picture, it directly gets impacted at first C. Creation of income stops. I think you would be agree with me, Shraddha.
Yes.
Right? Because its impact will be on the first C.
Yes.
Now, when first C has been impacted, would second C will stop? Family will require money to live.
Absolutely.
So that will continue. Now, from where this money for expenses will come? For some time, it will come from the third C. That is creation of wealth. So you have to liquidate your fixed deposits, your property, or whatever assets you have created. So your third C will take care of the second C. But after some time, there will be nothing left with the family. And then the fifth C will come into the picture. Though I said 4 C's, but there will be a choice between fourth and fifth. So I'm taking fifth C first as an option, that is charity. Your dependents will be depending on someone to live their standard of living. Now, what option insurance provides is the fourth C. The fourth C is called continuation of income. It means if I'm buying a health plan or I'm buying a life plan, life insurance plan, and any 3D happens, disease, disability, or death. So what this fourth C will do, fourth C will replace my first C. My creation of income will continue. Though I am not there, but my income is there. So let's say I require 25,000 rupees per month as a family expense, right? So if bank rate of interest is 6%, so I require at least 50 lakh rupees in my bank at 6%. I'm just taking a ballpark number. It may be 0.5% here and there. So if I put 50 lakh rupees in bank at 6%, then my family gets 25,000 rupees per month as an expense, as an interest, right? So if I buy a life plan, let's say where my premium is, just I'm giving you a number as an example, 10,000 rupees per year, and my life cover is 50 lakh rupees. And any unfortunate event happens like life insurance, right? Any death happens or disability happens, then that money will come into the picture. So financial planning has to be done in a pyramid mode. The base has to be protection. That is called defensive planning. Then you have to take a moderate risk where savings are important. You are not highly keen for returns, but you are keen for safety of your capital, liquidity, and then it comes to the aggressive planning. So defensive planning, protection planning, then your saving needs, and then your investment needs. In India, it's the other way around. The pyramid has been built in a reverse way. The way Madam Ranjani shared that first of all, people ask, kitna milega? So there was a time, just allow me 2 more minutes. There was a time when people used to put a lot of money in property, double ho jayega. But suddenly due to any disease or any emergency requirement, if I just need 1 lakh rupees, will I sell my garage? Will I sell only my kitchen? No, I have to liquidate entire property. And when this kind of situation comes, people and market takes advantage of this situation. And there are a lot of legal litigations. So when you buy individual. But when you sell, it has been sold in a family manner. You have to bring a lot of NOCs.
Yeah.
So it is very, very important. And the question which you asked is a very interesting question. Believe me, I'm in this life insurance sector since last 14 years. Many people say, I'm paying 2 lakh rupees premium, LIC premium or whatever premium in insurance. How much I have to pay? I have already 7 policies. Please don't give me now policies. But very important question when asked, how much insurance cover you have? There is a blank on the face.
Yes.
And that becomes the problem.
Yes.
Why? Because kitna milega, how much returns I will get was the buying point of financial planning. India has a lot of insurance, but Indians are not insured. So people remember how much. Oh, one more thing, as Pankaj ji is there, Many people say, my tax planning has been done, now I don't need insurance. It means life insurance has been connected with tax planning. It's a byproduct. I think one or two instruments are there, Pankaj will correct me, which gives EEE benefit, exempt. When you pay your money, you get ETC deduction. When your money is growing, you get deduction. When your money is coming back, it is under section 1010D. So ideally, a person must have minimum 10 times of his annual income as life insurance cover. So let's say my annual income is 10 lakh rupees. So my minimum life insurance cover has to be minimum 1 crore rupees. It has no relation with your premium. It has no relation with your tax planning. It has no relation with returns. Hope I addressed your.
Yes, so thank you so much. Like the way you've explained it in a wonderful manner with the model of 5C and 3 days is something that I myself will never forget. So let's move on to the next question.
Before we move on to the next question, I think I would like to add what what Abhay has said.
Yeah,
As you grow in life, you realize the importance of having the security. As you grow, when you have your family and you understand that your family is also dependent on certain people. So, for example, if one dependent person is earning income and you have a lot of dependence in the family, then you understand the importance of it. So that's where you realize that taking an insurance is not just about tax saving. It's about giving a financial security to your family.
Absolutely, I completely second.
Very aptly said, Pankaj ji, and
very true.
This is what, believe me, just I'm putting because I saw a video. Shraddha, can I have 1 minute, or we are running short of time? Because you are the moderators, you have to control us. Otherwise, it will be a free-flowing session. 1 minute, can I borrow?
Yes, sure, sir.
So, as we all remember that there was a Pulwama incident and a lot of our soldiers sacrificed their life. One news was coming in some video or other. The highest insurance cover was around 3 lakh rupees and the minimum was 30,000 rupees.
Yes.
So it's very unfortunate, right? That financial security has been sacrificed.
Yes.
And it's very important to have, and in pandemic, as you asked second question, I didn't answer that. Now I am answering. In pandemic, the protection cell, the cover cell, we call it a term plan. In life insurance language, we call it a term plan. Term plan cell has gone multifold up.
Yes.
So health insurance and term insurance is now been demanded. Right? So very important. Over to you, Shraddha.
Okay.
Thank you, Abhay sir, for enlightening us. As you said that we have a lot of insurance plans, but India being young, it is not insured. Brings me to the next question. So majority of our attendees for today's webinar are in the age group of 23 to 40, I believe. A lot of us belong to buy now, pay later kind of a generation. So we are comfortable opting for home loans and EMIs facilities on whichever purchase possible. So I would like to ask you, Ms. Ranjini, what are your views on managing such debt? Do you think this is a good practice?
Okay, it's a great question, and I think this is predominantly a mindset with millennials that I have come across. That today's trend is typically to flaunt the best of the gadgets that you can hold on to. Obviously, it's a cool thing to do, right? But it's also important to realize in terms of this kind of binge shopping phobia that we have needs to be restricted somewhere. One tends to go overboard because of the ease of EMIs that are the facilities that are available to us. The fact that e-commerce is luring buyers left, right, and center with super hot deals that you can come across on the online websites, and EMIs, of course, sone pe suhaga, so it becomes all the more easier for the generation to kind of grab the first thing that they can lay their hands on. I think this one habit somehow probably can get pretty dangerous, and we've actually seen people getting embroiled into this bhulbulaya of EMIs कि अभी करना क्या है, while you don't realize when you're getting into it, beyond a particular time, it just actually comes at a stage where you just cannot handle, repaying that particular EMIs. And I think this was something which was pretty evident in the West countries and, abroad. But today, I think we're typically aping the West when it comes to this culture of a credit society that we are talking about, a credit economy that we are looking at. And we are slowly shifting from this culture of buying only when needed to buy at the first instance of availability. I think it's extremely important that this kind of a habit tends to create a situation of people living paycheck to paycheck literally at the end of the month, where we don't see savings in spite of people earning a fancy handsome salary, if you were to look at today in today's time that they're drawing. But at the end of the month, it's very unfortunate to see that they're still not able to save a single paisa because of this particular culture that they have adopted themselves to. So what's the learning? I believe that debt should be typically used as a leverage strategy, and it has to have an upper limit, it has to have a cap, right? So one needs to really understand that yes, it's a great strategy, as I said, to leverage debt, but any kind of EMI, be it a personal loan, be it a car loan, be it housing loan, it should never exceed 40% of your total take home income at any point in time, right? And this is one thumb rule. If one really adopts, then he or she can always ensure that even in uncertainties like today, where you are having pay cuts, you're having job losses, which is becoming so very evident today, people can still manage to continue with their life, sail through these rough patches and come out of it least hurt if they know what they're getting into. So I think one of the biggest or the most dangerous loans that one can get into is a credit card loan. That's one loop, that's one of the costliest loans that you can get into. So that should be a big no when it comes to looking at EMIs. Also, I'm sure that today's pandemic has a lot of lifestyle lessons for us, in terms of, if we were to think about our life situation probably pre-January or pre-Feb 2020 or pre-pandemic, right? The way we would typically adopt to is the lifestyle that was pretty much, going out, eating out, watching movies, swiping our cards at every mall that we can get into and probably pick up stuff, probably which we might not be using at a later point in time, but just the feel good factor of wanting to kind of, own it, right? But I think, in the last 6 months, can we actually see the stark difference that it has brought in our lives, right? What we thought was an absolute lifestyle necessity then, today we're not even looking at it. So typically, we've seen a drastic reduction in expenses by almost 20 to 25%. I mean, in my own life situation, I can see that change, and I'm sure we all are seeing that same change. Of course, it's probably also because of that sense of uncertainty or fear of what to expect going forward. Maybe that's kind of holding us tight to ensure that we don't go and splurge, or we don't kind of swipe our cards as easily as we could earlier. So I think it's extremely important to understand to what extent we should go and get into a debt as a situation. So it's a great time for introspection. I think it's extremely important for all of us to take this as a start point in our life, that we don't need pandemics to give us life lessons like this. We can definitely ensure that we can live within our limits. We should enjoy life for today. Of course, we are working so hard towards that, but that doesn't give us the leverage to kind of just go overboard and end up our life in a mess, difficult to really come out of. That could be something that I would want to convey.
Thank you so much, Ranjini ma'am, for shedding light on that. Shraddha, over to you.
Okay, so the current pandemic has produced a black swan set of events. We are experiencing something that we've never seen before. So with most of the countries restricting international travel, a lot of people have had to undertake an involuntary stay in India. Most of them may have crossed or are about to cross the threshold limit to qualify as an Indian tax resident. So I would like to ask you, Mr. Pankaj, what does it mean for such individuals from tax perspective?
Thanks, Rajni. I think it's a very practical question, and I'm sure the people who have stayed and settled abroad and who had come on a visit would have specifically experienced this kind of a situation, because you don't expect suddenly international flights to stop.
Yeah.
So obviously, since you are back in India and your stay is extended, there is a provision in the income tax which talks about the residential status, wherein if you are in India for more than 182 days, you will be classified as a resident Indian in India, right? And there's a second condition as well, which says that if you're in India for the last year for 60 days or more and 365 days for last 4 years, then you would classify. So if I have come on a visit on in India and if I'm stuck, then there is a larger possibility that although I am employed outside India, there is a larger possibility that if I extend my stay in India, I can possibly become a resident in India as well. So now that has a very two-way sword to it, wherein if I am a resident in India, the thumb rule is that I need to pay taxes for the income that is generated from India. First is that. Second is the income that is generated from outside India also has to be taxed in India in case a person is resident in India. So obviously now our government has taken a cognizance of this situation, and it's a very unique situation which will I'm sure will never happen, or maybe even if happens, it would be very far and few. But they have taken cognizance of the situation, and that's how they have amended the income tax law as well. So this is a temporary relief that is being given by the government, wherein it states that any person who has visited India on or before 22nd of March, and due to current pandemic situation, he is not able to exit India, and without exiting, he's crossing the threshold due to which his stay in India is considered to be or maybe breaching the limit that is defined under the Income Tax Act. So the provision is such that you can exclude that period of stay in India for the purpose of calculating or maybe considering that the person is resident in India or not. So what benefit it gives is that if a person by any chance is becoming a resident in India, you can exclude that period, and still that person would be considered as non-resident in India. So I have been traveling on the professional tours outside India as well, on a not that frequent but on and off. So just for your information as well, I just came back from Middle East on 6th of March. I was there for around 1.5 months. So what if I would have stranded there? It can be other way around as well, right?
Yeah.
So that's how in not only Indian government but across the globe, people have taken certain measures so that people are not impacted due to the situation which is largely out of their control. If the international flights are suspended, nothing much I can do about it, right?
Yes.
So that's how it is being taken care. And there have been a lot of instances where the stay has been extended, the visa have been expired, the passport is nearing the expiry as well. So there
Yes.
are a lot of operational challenges as well,
Yes.
not only operational of flights but also the operational challenges wherein visa have expired, passport have expired. Obviously we need to renew that as well. So all these have been adequately taken care of. So whenever we are filing the returns, we are considering the residency status. This needs to be taken considered of.
Thank you, Pankaj sir. I think a lot of us were unaware of the relief that was declared. So thank you so much for throwing light on that. Chinmay?
Yes, brings me to the last question to Mr. Abhay. Today a lot of organizations sponsor health insurance to their employees. So, what are your views on solely relying on the corporate health insurance? Is it really necessary to have a standalone cover in place?
Fantastic question, Chinmay. And most of the students are quite young and they are enjoying their corporate career and life. Let me share a very uh, open and honest view on this, right? So when you start your career with a corporate, they offer you group term insurance, right? So you are covered for a certain proportion of your annual income, and they also cover you with some medical aid or health insurance. It's not bad, it's good to have this, right? But don't rely on that. Why? Because let me share with you. Let's say after 2 years, you suddenly feel that you want to shift to some uh, other organization, right? So now the other organization may be having better, equal, or less than benefit kind of offer for you in terms of your insurance cover or medicals. Point number two, the plans which you have through your organization may not cover all the requirements which are related with the health, right? There will be certain terms and conditions, cappings. Again, it's a renewable policy every year. So you never know that what benefits got added next year, what benefit got excluded. Point number three, let's say in a corporate, you will work till 50, maybe higher side, because nowadays young generation want to retire as early as possible. Let's say at 45 or 50. So whenever you retired or whenever you leave the organization, that cover also gets ceases, right? And if you want to buy a new cover at the age of 45 or 50, it would be very, very expensive. Number one. Second thing, if you are suffering from any ailment, lifestyle related disease, then qualifying for that plan would be very, very difficult for you and you may not get it. So having your own plan for a long time, long term perspective is very, very important. And see, it's very important to buy financial protection at the right time, right? Because age increases, price increases, qualifying chances goes down. It happens other way around because medical tests will come. So as you grow in age, the cost of premium will be high and your qualification criteria will be difficult. So my suggestion that you must have a very, very comprehensive plan, not only for you, but for your family, because there are certain plans which covers your parents also. And let me share a difference between Mediclaim, health insurance, and there are some critical illness riders which are available in life insurance. Mediclaim is reimbursement mechanism. So whatever bill you produce, those bills gets reimbursed if they fall in that category. Health insurance, it means a guaranteed amount has been given to you for a particular treatment. Whether you spend less than that or you spend more than that, it doesn't matter anything. And there is something called critical illness benefit, CI benefit. So in critical illness benefit, which is a part of life insurance plan, the amount has been reimbursed on the diagnosis of the disease. Whether you do a treatment or you don't do a treatment, it's not related at all. So let's say if you have taken a life insurance plan in that you opted a critical illness rider, and if any particular disease which has been mentioned in that occurs, the hefty amount will be given upfront. And it is required. See, Mediclaim and health insurance will take care of your treatment, but at the same time, your family also need money for their monthly household expenses. So any amount which is coming through your critical illness rider will support family also to take care of their daily needs. So hope I have answered your query.
Yes.
Thank you, Abhay sir. Yes, so we have been, we have been experiencing this pandemic situation for now more than 6 months. So, a few questions that are quite common for all the three panelists that we have, even you, Pankaj sir, and Ranjini ma'am. So, to start with Abhay sir, my first question is, according to you, what was the most important financial lesson, that you learned during this pandemic?
Very nice question, Chinmay, and let me quote it in a statement that your savings should never be at the mercy of your expenses. It is said that work gets accommodated with time available.
Yes.
Same way, expenses gets accommodated with money available. So today, a big lesson has been learned that if you do not have a watch and control on your expenses, then no income is enough income for saving. So it is said rightly that you don't become rich by earnings, but you become rich by savings. A person may be having less income than me, but he would be having far better liquidity for times like this. and a person may be rich than me, but he's struggling with a cash crunch. Why? Because expenses. Another very important thing I learned in this pandemic period, that there is a difference between asset and liabilities. The things which we call sometime asset, Pankaj will agree with me, they are the liabilities. They are not the assets. But the assets are the things which generate income, right? So sometimes we get confused. My TV is my asset, my refrigerator is my asset, my car is my asset. They are the liabilities. They are not the assets, because they depreciate, and I have to pay money to maintain them, right? Since last 5 months, my fuel consumption is zero on my vehicle, but my insurance, general insurance, car insurance is 100%. So this is a big lesson which I learned, that have a consciousness on your expenses.
Thank you, Abhay sir. Ma'am, Ranjini ma'am, same question goes for you. What is the, even though you are in this field for almost 20 plus years now, there must be some or the other learning that you might have figured out during this entire course of pandemic. So if you could, put some light on the same.
Sure. So I think what Mr. Abhay said, I completely second what he said. I think I completely agree that savings is something that's absolutely essential for everybody to take care of. And today's times, as I said, is a true introspective time to really think about what is relevant, what are the things that we should be spending on, is something that we really need to be careful about. So for me, I think over and above what Mr. Abhay said, there are three genuine learnings I got from this particular pandemic. One thing that I realized is that contingency kitty in times like these is absolutely essential, right? Because I think very many times we think about why do we need to really kind of keep aside money, what's going to happen, or we don't really give it a very serious thought to. But today's times clearly has given us a very strong lesson, saying that contingency kitty can come in very handy in these kind of trying times, especially where that there are possible pay cuts or job losses, and that, as he rightly said, expenses do not come down. Expenses are there, and some of them are absolutely mandatory for continuity of your life, right? So contingency kitty extremely essential. At least you should keep aside about 6 months to a year's contingency kitty, that will ensure that you can wade through this temporary financial uncertainties in the best possible way. That's one very crucial lesson, I think, needs to be taken seriously. Not that I didn't know, or not that we wouldn't practice that, but I think that has become my mantra in terms of my emphasis for my clients, in terms of what they should do with their money. Second important thing, which of course we have always been harping on, is to clearly be investing with a definite purpose or an objective, which we call a goal. Clearly understand what is it that you want to be ready for. Have a definite time horizon, which ensures an appropriate asset allocation. So that helps in not just losing track of the reality that these crucial life commitments are there to stay in our life. So while the pandemic is there today, right, and we need to wait through these uncertainties today, it doesn't mean that life has come to a standstill. We have
कमाएंगे. But people forget the fundamentals of portfolio balancing, where you need to have a mixed bunch of investments, right from the debt, which gives you fixed income, and on the equity side of it, which can give you a good amount of capital gain, right? Because we all know the equity market just shot down in the month of April, May, June. Now it has started to recover. But when, imagine, you needed money at that point in time, you would have required to sell off your portfolio at a huge amount of losses. Obviously, that is counterproductive in that sense. And last but not the least is upskilling. Now, what we do is, when we get into a job, we never think about getting outside our comfort zone. We don't want to think outside the comfort zone. We need to constantly think about upskilling ourselves. Imagine 10 years from today, whatever we do today would be redundant, would be taken over by some kind of a technology. The human requirement for that particular job would be very less. and I'm very afraid about the current generation where they are really getting stagnant in the position that they are working. They don't want to explore new things. There are a lot of technologically new things which are coming, like data analytics, data science, coding. These are the new talk of the town, but no one has, I'm sure a lot of people would have not even googled to understand what is actually data science, what is data analytics part of it, because going forward data would be the biggest asset a company has. So we need to know how to use that asset to generate the additional amount of revenue for the company, and if we are able to add value to the company, then we will be able to grow in life. Otherwise we'll be stuck where we are. So I think first important part is upskill yourself, learn every day.
Thank you, Pankaj.
Just Chinmay, with your
Shraddha?
permission, I want to take 30 seconds. Both the panelists has added wonderful value. Just to
Sure.
put one perspective that what should be taken into consideration when you do financial planning. So I'm just putting some points, and Ranjani ji and Pankaj ji can add to it. Point number one, if you have pen and paper, write down the safety of your capital. Please write down safety of your capital. Point number two, liquidity aspects. Point number three, tax implications. Point number four, real rate of return. Pankaj ji will, Ranjani ji and Pankaj ji will echo my voice. There's a difference between rate of return and real rate of return. So let's say inflation is 6% and my rate of return is 5%, then it is minus 1%. My money is growing by minus 1%. And even if I consider tax, then again it will be a different impact. So consider real rate of return. And fifth and most important is ease in transaction. Ease in transaction. Here I press a button and money is in my account, rather than I'm carrying property documents in my hand and wandering street and identifying and searching a buyer. And one last thing, I remember one wonderful advertisement played by Cadbury. Khush hai zamana aaj pehli tarikh hai. We earn to make other people rich. So whenever salary comes, we start giving it. But financial planning says that whenever you earn, pay to yourself first. The first check has to be cut by your own name, for your own name. First money has to be given to your own self. And what we do, we start giving to others, laundry wala, sabji wala, rent wala, insurance wala. And that's the reason Khush hai zamana aaj pehli tarikh hai. Why? Because Zamana knows that Abhayji's salary has come. Now his salary has come, it means now we will get the money. Who will be the last person to get the money? Abhayji himself. Over to you, Chinmay and Shraddha.
And I think that's exactly where I would just like to add that, taking that thing a little ahead by saying that, having a savings budget first is very important. As you rightly said, pay yourself first, because that's what is the trigger point for your own savings. And that's the trigger point for making all your, needs and aspirations a reality. Only if you save can you really start the first trigger point of starting to invest. And only if you invest can you ensure that you're able to make your dreams a reality. So absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am. 3 models. Number one, income minus expense equal to saving. 85% live with this model and they complain, क्या करें बचता ही नहीं है यार.
Exactly.
Second model, ऋणम कृत्वा घृतम पीबात, ये संस्कृत में मैंने कहा, कर्जा करो और घी पियो. They have all the credit cards of the world, no debit card. Borrowings minus income, more borrowings. And the third model, income minus saving equal to expense. Only 5% people are able to live with the third model, income minus savings equal to expense. So whenever they earn, they simply minus their savings first, and whatever is left, they design their expenses.
Thanks to all panelists for their views on the first question. Now my second question, which is open to all three of you, is we all know by the state of affairs and what's happening in the economy that we are heading towards a recession. So my second question to all of you is that how do we survive this upcoming recession? So Mr. Pankaj, would you like to start with this?
Yeah, thanks, Shraddha. I think I've already covered this. See, we all know that there are a lot of job losses that have happened. And if you think why that job loss has happened, do you think that everyone in the world is fired from the job? No, right? There are certain selected people which organization have identified who they can live without. So you need to have the right amount of skill to be relevant in the organization that you're working with. That's why I stressed on the last question that upskilling is a very, very important aspect. If you still live in the traditional world where you think that I'm very comfortable in my role that I'm doing, I don't want to explore new things, I'm extremely sorry. If not today, tomorrow you will be considered as a replaceable resource, not only in the current organization, but any organization you want to be it. So my humble request to everyone is, please upskill yourself. Whoever have maybe due to unfortunate situation have lost job, please look at how I can take myself to the next level from today, so that when the job market opens, I am again relevant in the current scheme of things. And if not, if you decide not to do a job, you need to be very strong with your skills so that you can be a good entrepreneur in that sense. So having the right amount of skill is a very, very important aspect.
Ranjani, would you like to add anything to that?
Sure. So, as Mr. Pankaj put it, it's very, very true to upgrade one's skills, and these kind of situations definitely clearly highlight the importance of the same. Again, probably maybe with the objection of reiteration or a repetition, but I would definitely think that to be able to ensure that we have a contingency kitty is extremely essential in, to ensure that we sail through any kind of eventualities that we're talking about. Another very important thing that I feel is the whole idea of goal-based planning is basically based on this concept that you need to have money when you need it, right? And you can't have a control on external situations, you name it, in the form of recession, you name it, in the form of any kind of macro parameters not working in your favor, or a pandemic like this. These are things which are beyond your control. Having said that, what is the reality is making your dreams or goals a reality for you and your family. So the whole idea is, when you clearly have a goal based financial planning approach, for the fact that you have certain goals which are there in the short term and the midterm. So it's extremely important for you to ensure that at no point in time you neglect the short term needs, thinking that ठीक है, जब अगर कल को मेरा bonus आ जाता है, कल को पैसे आ जाएंगे, तो I will look at it if it's a crucial goal. When you're planning for it, please give it as much importance and ensure that you are funding it well in time, so that in case of an eventuality like this, like a recessionary period, if it comes up, you still don't have to worry, because you have provided for the same, and that's going to take you through those crucial 2 or 3 commitments in the short and the midterm. Again, while I feel, yes, there is a lot of frustration, a lot of disappointment, a lot of unfortunate events that are happening today, that's a very sad part of it. But I somehow am a little optimistic in my approach, and I believe that this is not the end of the world, right? I mean, it's not that we have not, as I said, again, to in my earlier stance as well, I believe that some or the other event keeps coming up in our lives. It could be named differently, it could be financial events, it could be health events, you name it. Yeah, right from a Lehman crisis to probably an NBFC crisis, or for that matter, right from the swine flu to the Ebola virus, and then to pandemic. I think it's not that we these kind of eventualities, you can completely shoo them away, or the fact that you can just pray that it's it never happens in your life. I think those are things you can't. Well, that will be the greatest thing to happen, that things like this don't happen in the future. But realistically, what I believe is, these are bound to happen with a new name every time an event like this happens. So it's just a question of wading through these eventualities in the best possible way, with a shield around us in every aspect, be it from a perspective of health, be it from a perspective on the financial setup, whatever it is, we need to have a shield to protect us from all of this on one side, but we have to continue to move on. It cannot remain static or constant. Like, times like these will also pass. So it's just a question of, if you know that yes, we are likely to confront a situation or an event like this even in the future, that will clearly tell us that we need to start preparing for it, right? And we need to ensure that whatever we do, we plan and execute it to the best possible way, preparing for the worst, but at the same time, that life cannot come to a standstill. It has to go on, whatever be the situation, whatever personal setbacks we might be facing, professional setbacks we might be facing. This is not going to be static. This is not the end of the world. So we have to move on from here. So recession, yes, it is there. It's the reality that we are likely to confront with. But I think that also is a passing phase. So we just need to keep our clear-cut hygiene parameters ready for us to face them and move on with life.
Thank you, Ranjini. I think goal-based financial planning is something which is really important, not only in this times like these, but in life in general. So thank you so much. Our participants are asking a lot of questions, so I think we now open the floor for our Q&A session.
So we have been receiving a lot of questions from YouTube streamers and also from in the chat box. So to start with, Abhay sir, one question that have come up when you said about the rate of return and a real rate of return. So one question that is relevant with regards to the inflation question, that is, could you also compare the real rate of return in comparison to the CAGR of many products? So this is one question that has come up from the crowd.
See, there are two aspects of financial planning. One is the mathematical proportion, and second one is the goal-oriented behavior. So sometimes what happens whenever we take a decision, right? We simply go one-sided. Either we rely highly on goal and then choose a wrong financial instrument, or we simply do the mathematical calculation and then we are not able to meet to our goal. These numbers are always fluctuating. They are not stagnant, right? So whether it is inflation or taxation, right? So earlier, if you see 5-7 years back, you were getting a fair returns from the debt market. And even 10 years back, FDs used to give around 12-13% of returns. Nowadays, fixed deposits are around 5 to 6%. And it has been predicted that in future, we may be having 1% or not at all, any interest on your savings and investments. So what is your purpose? What is your goal? As Ranjani ji shared very rightly, sometimes you have to lose the interest rate. Why? Because ease of operation is on your fingertips. If I want my money in my account within a second, I'm ready to lose 1% rate of return. That's okay with me. But what is the comfort with me? Raat ke 12 baje bhi, even if I need my money at night 12, the money will be there in my account. But if I'm having better returns in some other instrument, but it will take 1 year of time to get liquidated, and my money requirement is now, what is the use of that instrument? So yes, of course, it has to be calculated, but at the same time, you have to match it with your goal, objective. Only then you will be getting a win-win kind of situation with your financial investment.
Thank you, Abhay sir, for letting the crowd understand about the complications on the same. Shraddha?
So Ranjini, the second question from the crowd is to you. So over the course of last few months, prices of gold reached new highs, wherein equity and debt markets couldn't manage to perform well. So considering the general investor nature, is it appropriate to allocate high portion of one's portfolio to gold or such precious metals? Will it be beneficial in the long term?
Okay, that's a good question. I would say, I think probably this question comes from the fact that, in the last month or so, probably gold had a super run. So I think that probably, gives a feeling that probably that's the new flavor of the day to get into. But I think one thing I must say that, gold does not always glitter, right? I think it's an asset class, if you were to look at it, typically it is something that one clings on to in times of uncertainty. It's more like a hedging strategy, in times of uncertainties. So gold returns, if you were to look at it for an Indian investor, it's very, very dependent on the dollar movement. And it's also an asset class. If you were to look at it on the long run, it definitely cannot beat inflation. So also gold prices move in cycles. So today, if you were to look at it, it has risen to these levels, probably because of two key key reasons. One is basically the uncertainty that people associate with the economy in terms of when the businesses are going to come up and so on and so forth. So basically some sort of uncertainty that people are very concerned about. And of course the fact that US dollar is appreciated against US dollar is appreciated against rupee, right? So the whole point is that it is not about any one particular asset class doing the run or being the best to be into. Every asset class has its own risk and rewards. As I said, coming back to my earlier question, it is about the relevance of it in your situation. Having said that, it clearly depends on what is the goal that you want to fulfill, what is the quantum of requirement, what is the pace of growth that you wish to have, right? What is the level of risk, the risk appetite that particular investor has, and the risk that your investment needs to really get into to be able to reach the destination that that you have set for yourself. All of these things really decide in terms of the right mix. As we always said, asset allocation is extremely an important exercise when it comes to investments. So the key things that you look forward to when you're looking at investments: one, that as we rightly said, it needs to have a safety perspective, from a perspective of safety of capital on one side. It needs to ensure that there is enough liquidity for the investor at any point in time, right? The fact that it is able to beat inflation in the long run, that's a very important thing. The real rate of return that we are talking about, it's extremely important to understand that it's very crucial, whether our decision has been appropriate or no. Like Mr. Ajay very rightly pointed out, if you have a growth of about 6.5% or 6% when say inflation is at 7%, you're actually degrowing your money. Your money is actually getting eroded in front of your eyes, but you're not realizing that, right? And so it's extremely important, as I said, to understand what should be the right mix of assets in your portfolio in relevance to your life situation, in relevance to the commitments that you want to take care of, in relevance to the pace of growth that needs to take, in relevance to the time horizon for which you have to stay invested. All of these factors are very, very crucial to decide what forms a part of your asset class. Having said that, as I said, gold probably could form about 5% of the overall portfolio, so it cannot be a major asset in your portfolio, is my thought.
So you're saying that it's good to have, as a part of your portfolio from diversification point of view, but not as, not have a huge exposure to your portfolio.
When we call
absolute.
When we call a complete diet, right? So
Yes.
in our food plate, we have carbohydrates,
Yeah.
proteins, minerals, fat, salt. But what happens? We simply develop a biased behavior towards a particular instrument.
Correct. Absolutely.
Right. So my father was a banker. So he always used to say me, Arey, you keep on doing some fixed deposits. You keep on doing it. He never told me that you buy life insurance. Right. So over a period of time, we develop our own preferences for an instrument and we become very, very possessive about it, which is not actually good. So if salt is important, water is important, fat is important, carbohydrate is important, mineral is important, in the same way,
Everything has its own weightage. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you, Rajni. Thank you so much. And thank you, Abhay sir, for your views on this question. I guess we'll move on to the next question.
So yes, before we conclude in next 10 minutes, the next question that has been come from the crowd for Mr. Pankaj sir. The question goes something like this: as all the panelists said that the savings in one of the most is one of the most important aspect. But second thing is many of the employers' salary has been cut down to almost 20% on average. So how it will create an impact on savings? What kind of strategy can be used in this situation?
I think it's a valid question, and I think most of the people are going through either pay cuts or the job cuts as well, and then you run into a dilemma whether to have necessary amount of expenditure or do the necessary amount of savings as well. But one also needs to be very cognizant of the fact that I think Abhay sir also mentioned some time back that his fuel expenditure has gone to zero. So if someone is not traveling to an office or working from home, indirectly there is a minimum 10% savings on the expenditure you incur when you travel
Easy.
to the office, right? So don't consider that as your pay cut, but look at it from the other side wherein you are savings on the
Expenses.
expenditure part of it, and look at it positively and think that how I can manage my expenses in the current scenario where I don't. And secondly, important part of it is where before pandemic we used to have a lot of expenditure from an outside world as well, where you used to dine out, let's say on the weekends, used to have spendings on lavish clothes and other things as well, like movie theaters and all that. So other expenditures, now after 6 months we all have collectively realized that we can live without these aspects as well.
True, very true.
So earlier it was considered as a necessity. Now people no longer consider these kind of expenditure, which we used to do it every day or maybe every weekends, as no longer as necessity. So indirectly you are saving on that part.
Correct.
But I understand both are getting nullified. So I don't think so. If you are having 20-25% pay cut, your savings would not be that much impacted as you're thinking around.
Very true.
So yeah, Pankaj sir, so just if you could add into this another question that has come up from the crowd. One of the viewers has said that can multiple sources of income improve the lifestyle, primarily because compared to North America, Indian lifestyle is nominally low. Most of our finance goes in basic needs only, and our corporate jobs occupies most of the time in the day. We don't get time for other income. So how do we address that?
Correct. See, I think it's very important that having an alternative source of income as well. So if you're a salaried person, I cannot solely rely on my salaried income as a primary source of income as well. So I know you get a lot of occupied when we are doing a job, but you should also identify certain alternatives which obviously will not give you a primary source or maybe that kind of income, but obviously it will help you in some way that you can have a reasonable amount of income, and that amount of income you can have a good savings over a period of time that will help you build a good corpus and the portfolio as well. And it's never advisable to be dependent only on the one source of income.
Thank you, sir.
So Ranjini, the next question from the participants is for you.
Sure.
So that participant wants to ask, how can I do my own financial planning, or is it necessary for me to have a certified financial planner?
Okay, that's a good question indeed. So first and foremost, I think the basic hygiene parameters that we were talking about in terms of having a savings budget, in terms of ensuring that you have a contingency kitty, you have enough health insurance. These are areas which you can do it yourself, right? There isn't anything that you need really a coach to really help you on those areas. But I think holistically, if we were to understand, probably as a financial planner, it becomes very important for us to delve into a lot of aspects in your life which probably you never thought as essential to really provide for or to plan for, and how to go about doing it. What is that number that you should be, the real number that you should be chasing? All of these things, probably it's very difficult for you to take your time out and do it yourself, right? It's like saying that, even if you're a doctor, okay, and if you have an ailment which is not your specialty, of course, even if it's your specialty, you will need to be treated by another doctor. It is very difficult for you to do it yourself. So even if you have some basic knowledge out of it, it's absolutely appropriate for you to have a planner, professional planner, who will help you to, give you the right path or a clear direction of how you should be planning for all your goals and how you need to take it forward from there. And also, it's like I would say it's more like a, fitness coach. Unless and until you have a trainer or a coach to really push you, yeah, to be able to reach your optimal potential that you have, which you on your own might not be able to do it. You might not have that inclination or that zeal to do it, but just as a coach helps you in doing it, I think a planner clearly gives you a lot of direction, clearly gives you a lot of insights, which would be very, very valuable to you. So I think it's good to go with a planner.
Thank you, Ranjini. I guess that pretty much must have explained to that participant.
Well shared, Ranjini ji. Just Shraddha, sorry to interrupt you in between.
Okay.
One very important thought is coming to my mind and I am not able to hold myself. Every household is having a doctor. Every household is having a lawyer. Every household is having a chartered accountant. Every household is having an electrician. Every household is having a plumber. Every household. हिंदुस्तान में हर व्यक्ति को थोड़ा थोड़ा सब कुछ आता है और उसको लगता है कि ये थोड़ा ही सब कुछ बहुत कुछ है. So the question, can I do my financial planning with my own? Yes. But the depth knowledge, the pros and cons, the way we all are here as an expert. Earlier also, we were knowing yes, saving is important. There is bank, there is post office, there is market. But all these analysis, goal-based analysis, right? 5-6 factors which needs to be considered. How much is your income? What is the consistency of your income, right? A player or a film star has a limited tenure to earn their money. A player who is going to participate in Olympic may be having a very little span of earning. Number of dependents on your income. Is your family having any person who is suffering from any ailment, lifestyle problem? But we do not consider all these things and we consider ourselves as an expert. And this is the problem. When we are not able to handle our disease at home, then we go to the doctor, right? Then we go to the chemist. Sorry, not to doctor. First we go to the chemist. First you will
self-treat,
Yeah, self-treat, then chemist, then general practitioner, and then the expert by the time the disease gets worse. So I'm not against that. You should not take any step towards your financial planning or goal, but always pay a due professional fees to an expert. Don't try to become that expert at your place. You are the expert of your domain. Try to spend that much time, money, improving in your own skill the way Pankaj ji has shared. Do some online certification by that time. Get some more training to strengthen your own domain. Don't try to get in others' domain.
And just to add on to that, whether you like it or not, an expert is an expert.
Yeah.
So if you avail the services of an expert, the output would also be a beautiful output. Otherwise, you'll always think, hey, I'm saving too much, but the kind of portfolio I'm generating is not up to the mark.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, everyone. So that brings me to the last question for the session. And the last question is for you, Mr. Abhay, that it is very common that, how many insurance shall, suffice for one individual, along with what are the parameters or consideration that one should take into account before, buying any insurance?
Fantastic. I will just respond it very crisply. Number one, replacement of your income has to be the first objective, right? Life insurance is not to make you rich, but in your absence, your family should not become poor. Number one. Number two, secure your children's education and marriage. So even if you are there, the instrument must help you to fetch that money. And God forbid, if you are not there, this responsibility has to be addressed. And the third one, India is ready to retire, but Indians are not ready to retire. If you don't have pension, then definitely you have tension, right? So start parking some money. You would have heard the story of ant and grasshopper. Start parking some money for 25, 30 years later. Don't look at it. so that you will be able to prepare a good kitty for your retirement, right? We spend most of the money on Sunday. We don't go on job. Retirement is nothing. It is permanent Sunday, but without pocket, without wallet. So you go on Sunday out without your purse, without your cards, you will find nothing out of it. So these goals are very, very important. First, secure them, save them, and then expect returns on them. So again, I'm saying protection, saving, and then returns, right? And last but not the least, you should find a good financial advisor and a good organization. It is not a buying. Buying happens only once, but servicing happens for lifetime. So you must identify a consultant who will serve you over a period of time.
Thank you so much, Abhay sir, for your thoughts over here. As we have been to the entire discussion for last 1.5 hours now, even Dr. Harish Purohit sir has been through this entire session. He has been listening us, but simultaneously he's attending another meeting. That is why he's unable to address this particular occasion. However, I would now would like Shraddha to provide us the closing remarks for the day. If we have any, if we do not have any questions.
So if there was one sentence that perfectly summed up what this coronavirus pandemic has taught us about money, it would probably be expect the unexpected. Even the smartest economic experts in the world couldn't have predicted this financial crisis. Yet, here we are. And while we may never deal with such kind of situation ever again, unexpected events will always be a part of our life. Financial prudence is all we need to sail through during such times. And believe it or not, it is not something impossible to achieve. If we learn from the crucial lessons learned during this pandemic and follow what our esteemed panelists have shared with us today, we can better protect ourselves against whatever curveball life decides to throw our way. All we require is to be a little more organized with our day-to-day finances. I would now like to request Chinmay to conclude the session with a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Shraddha. It is indeed an honor to extend a vote of thanks to each and everyone who has, contributed to the success of this particular webinar. Let me start with my sincere regards and hearty thanks to all the three eminent panelists for the day: Ms. Ranjini Prabhu-Tendolkar, CA Pankaj sir, Abhay Daudkhane sir, for their excellent contribution and to directing to the attendees in the field of personal finance. We are extremely thankful to you for your kind presence and for sharing the knowledge and deep insights to our audience. So I'm also grateful to all the attendees who are present here because your presence has indeed made this a successful event, and I believe that this webinar has certainly provided you with some insight on the subject. Once again, thank you, and